Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Nerdy Multiverse and yet another breakdown. Today we will be breaking down Season 3, Episode 8 of The Mandalorian, in other words being Chapter 24 of the series and the finale for the third season. A bit shorter of a finale compared to the others, but a very action-packed and intense one at that. And this episode is titled The Return. The episode begins right where the previous one left off as Bo and the rest of the surviving Mandalorians retreat back into the caves to get away from the Imperials and their ambush. While they do so, Bo gets in contact with Axe Woves, who is flying back up to their fleet to warn them of the incoming TIE bomber attack and to get Bo reinforcements, before they end up losing communication due to these storms. The scenes of Axe flying through these storms really reminded me of when we saw Jango Fett in action on Kamino. And as they escape back into the tunnels and caves, they take out even more of the Imperial troopers that could very well be Imperial Super Commandos. As the Imperials escort Mando to the debriefing room, he ends up escaping their grasp, taking them both out, and then reuniting with Grogu, who did help him take out the last soldier here, where then Mando contacts Bo and informs her that he is going after Moff Gideon. After seeing the TIE bombers and interceptors take off to proceed with their attack on the Mandalorian fleet, we cut to Moff Gideon, who is observing the security hologram, watching the dots move around the facility, and these dots are obviously Mando and Grogu. He's informed of the TIEs being launched and the imminent destruction of the Mandalorians' capital ship and their fleet. He then says that he will go and take care of Mando himself after he finds out that Mando has escaped. Mando and Grogu continue sneaking their way through the Imperial base, and then Din ends up contacting R5 and telling him to hack into the base's data and get him the location of Moff Gideon, so that he can finally track him down and end this once and for all. Axe finally arrives aboard the capital ship and warns all of the Mandalorians aboard to get off of the ship now and board the Gauntlet fighters, so that they can escape the incoming attack while also heading down to the planet's surface to give Bo reinforcements. As the Mandalorians fly off and board their Gauntlet fighters and head down to the planet's surface to back up Bo, the TIE bombers then come up and begin attacking the capital ship, while Axe stays behind and runs the ship, trying to take out as many TIEs as he can, while also distracting them from the rest of the fleet. R5 gets Mando the location of Moff Gideon, and he heads towards the hallway of Imperial troops that are separated by the different shield doors, much like the ones we saw in the Phantom Menace during Maul's duel with Kenobi and Qui-Gon on Naboo. Din has R5 open these shield doors one by one as he gets his own hallway scene, just like Vader and Maul have gotten, as he takes out the Imperial troopers section by section, and in the end, he ends up taking out the entire hallway of troopers with some great action sequences. Some mouse droids that we always see in the movies and such interrupt and try to get at R5, but he just electrocutes him and makes him fall off of the cliff as he flies off. Grogu and Mando then walk into the room with the different cloning capsules in them that we saw Gideon walk past in the previous episode. While Mando uses the control panel to shut them all down and set them to self-destruct, Grogu walks up to one of the capsules and we see that these are all clones of Moff Gideon himself, as he was talking about in the last episode with building an army of clones. And these clones have the Force, as Moff Gideon reveals in this episode. They leave the room after Mando sets all of the capsules to self-destruct before the clones inside of them could even be released. Cutting back to Bo and her forces as they retreat into another cave that the other Mandalorians have been using to grow different plants and vegetation. This was pretty cool to see, seeing that the planet's life is still sustaining in different areas. The armorer and the forces from the fleet arrive, and now we can definitely say that none of these guys were spies in the long run, and tons of people's theories about that were wrong, including ours. They end up joining forces with Bo and her Mandalorians, and they fly down into the Imperial base, and the Mandalorians get into an absolutely amazing fight sequence in the air with the Imperial forces, as Bo uses the Darksaber and the armorer uses her forging tools to take out the Imperials. While they battle in these skies is happening, Mando and Grogu get approached and confronted by Moff Gideon, who is still wearing his sort of Mandalorian mixed with the Dark Trooper sort of armor, and Mando and Gideon get into a fight, and it's not looking good for Din at all, as he's practically getting thrown around by Gideon due to his newfound superhuman-like strength that is coming from the Dark Trooper advancements in his suit. Already being beaten up by Gideon, Mando gets into even more trouble as the 3 Praetorian Guards come in and begin attacking him as well, as Gideon watches on. Of course, the Praetorian Guards are the main guards for Snoke in the sequels. Grogu takes notice of this and gets angry, distracting the Praetorian Guards and basically challenging them into a battle. Mando tries to chase after them and save Grogu, but Gideon holds him back with an onslaught of attacks as the great battle in the sky continues on. The Praetorian Guards end up destroying the IG-11 or IG-12 suit of Grogu's, and Grogu begins hopping around just like how we saw Yoda do in battle. Gideon overpowers Mando until Bo comes flying down to take over the fight with Gideon and telling Din to go save his kid, and so he does, as Bo uses the Darksaber to take on Gideon, who ignites his own vibro sort of weapon that the Praetorian Guards use themselves. Just as it seems like the Praetorian Guards are about to take out Grogu next, Mando comes in and they end up taking them out in a team effort, as Mando uses his weapon skills and Grogu uses the Force to push them around. As the capital ship comes crashing down towards the Imperial base, Bo is on the brink of defeat herself, being overpowered by Gideon as well, as he grabs her hand and crushes it, while also crushing and presumably destroying the Darksaber. And honestly, this was a bit sad to see, as we have seen this unique and one-of-a-kind weapon throughout Star Wars history many times, and it has had tons of iconic and amazing users as well. Gideon makes a remark about how Mandalorians are weak after they lose their little trinkets, and Bo smiles and says that Mandalorians are stronger together, as Mando comes in to rejoin the battle as he blasts at Gideon, as Axe Woves directs the capital ship to crash directly into the Imperial base so that it gets destroyed. So as it crashes, he escapes the ship and the other Mandalorians then escape the base. But Mando, Grogu, Bo, and Gideon are still down in the base and battling against each other, using their different Mandalorian tools as well as the Force to get Gideon off of their back as the ship crashes and explodes. Bo and Mando run to Grogu, prepared to die protecting the child from the flames, as Gideon opens his arms and lets out his last breath and scream as he is taken out by the fire. Or so we are left to believe, because if we don't see a body in Star Wars, the character could very well have survived that incident, but I honestly doubt it when it comes to Gideon. After Gideon dies to the flames, we are left worried about what happened to Mando, Bo, and Grogu, but then we see that the fire around them is being held back and pushed away from them by Grogu, who is using his clearly immense force power to shield himself, but more importantly, his loved ones from the flames, just like how Kanan Jarrus did in the Rebels series. With the Imperials on Mandalore and Gideon being defeated now, we cut back to the living waters as the armorer has Ragnar Vizsla swear to the creed, as Mando walks in with Grogu to have him swear to the creed next. And I definitely think that Ragnar will be a character we see a lot in the future, as he is the one to carry on Clan Vizsla after his father's death. Mando tries to have the armor have Grogu added to the song and to the creed, but she says that he is way too young and he can't even speak yet, so he's unable to take the creed. So Mando asks her if his parents gave him permission, could he then become a Mandalorian? But she says that his parents are far from here if they are even alive, which is where Mando decides to adopt Grogu as his own, now being named as Din Grogu and a Mandalorian apprentice. So Mando must take Grogu off of Mandalore to begin his Mandalorian journey. But before they do so, Grogu looks into the living waters almost as if he can feel the presence of something in the water, as we see the mythosaur once more as its eyes open, proving to us all that it is in fact real and still alive. Cutting to the Great Forge as the armor hands off a torch to Bo, as she then relights the Great Forge, bringing it back to life, in turn bringing the heart of their planet and their people back to life as well, as they all chant for Mandalore. Super cool and honestly pretty emotional scene here, finally seeing Mandalore reinstated. Then arriving on the planet that looks a lot like Scarif, as Mando flies into the New Republic base that we saw earlier in this season in his N1 Naboo starfighter to meet with Carson Teva, who seems to be waiting for him at the bar here. And we can also see a fun little appearance in the background in the scene, as the one and only Dave Filoni is in the background. Mando speaks to Carson Teva about a business proposition, offering to work with the New Republic on jobs to hunt down and eliminate Imperial remnants as an independent contractor and on a case-by-case occasion, which is against New Republic regulation, but Teva is obviously down to work with Mando, and we can assume that this is what we will be seeing in the 4th season of the show. In return, Mando wants the scrapped assassin droid head that they have lying above the bar next to a bunch of old and destroyed Stormtrooper helmets, and the Stormtrooper helmet that is to the left of the droid head reminds me a lot of Project Blackwing, which is basically the very horrific and grotesque zombie story of the Star Wars universe. Finally cutting to Navarro 7 as Greef Karga thanks Mando for what he has done for the planet and its people, giving him a piece of land and a home that they can live at in between their future adventures. Mando then reveals that he has a gift for Greef as well, as we see that he had the scrapped assassin droid head put back onto the body of IG-11 so that Navarro has a new marshal and one that we are all familiar with, as the real IG-11 returns as the Marshal of Navarro 7, rocking the different colors that we often see on different marshals. As Mando sits down and relaxes while Grogu uses the Force to play with a frog, just like he did when he was training with Luke, the two sit around at their new home on Navarro 7, seemingly waiting for their next adventure, which is where this episode and the 3rd season as a whole ends off. Overall, a pretty good finale for the 3rd season of The Mandalorian. It was a bit shorter than usual, but it was also absolutely action-packed and had a very good conclusion to the season's storyline in my opinion. This season was a bit lackluster with a few of the episodes, but for the most part it was still entertaining and had some great action, and towards the end had tons of development and lots of emotion. This was another great entry for the series, and I hope we get to see season 4 sooner rather than later, and I am hoping that that season is an absolute banger. But of course, I would like to hear about your thoughts on this episode and the finale as well, so make sure to leave them down below. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed our breakdown on this episode, don't forget to give it a like, and with that being said, we will see you all the next time that we go through and explore the nerdy multiverse.